All right, hiya team. We've had a really good question sent through for Coach's Couch on the podcast this week. And as I was recording Coach's Couch earlier, I remember thinking this would make a really good topic for a quick video for people, because I know it's a question that comes up a lot in the Team Oxygen Addict group. It's a question that comes up a lot with athletes that I've worked with and coached. And the question is basically, my FTP on my tri-bike is 250 watts when I'm sitting up, and it's 200 watts when I'm down in the aero position. This was sent in by someone called DJC on Twitter. But like I said, it's also something that's come up a couple of times in our private Facebook group this week. So I wanted to talk through the differences you'll see in FTP when you're riding on a road bike, when you're riding on a tri-bike sitting up, when you're in the aero position. So first thing is, it's totally normal for those numbers to be different. In this case, it's about a 20% difference, which is bigger than we'd usually see, which is not to say it's something to worry about, but it is something to take care of. Usually, most people see that when they move from riding on a road bike to riding in the aero position, there's a drop off of somewhere in the region of 5 to 10%. And that gap gets smaller the more time you spend training in the aero position. Basically, you're recruiting different muscles in the aero position, subtly, but definitely different muscles, and recruiting them in different ways. So we're going to address this in a couple of ways. The first thing is, like I said, don't worry about the fact it's different. You'll still be going faster in your aero position than you would be going sitting up, just because you're going to be more aerodynamic in your aero position, okay? Second thing is, you'll need to train in the position you want to race in. So because you're recruiting different muscles in your aero position, the more time you can spend training in the aero position, the more it's going to replicate the position you'll be in on race day. And in an ideal world, you'll be in the aero position for the whole of your bike leg, because you've got much less wind resistance, so you'll be going much faster for the same power, or even faster for less power. Okay, but it is going to take some getting used to and some training for. So I remember interviewing Matt Botchwell and him talking about him really focusing on a lot of his work that he does on the trainer and the TT position being about just holding the position, not even really being bothered about what the actual numbers are, but aerodynamics trumping power. Okay, so remember that if you can train yourself to stay down in that position, you'll be going faster, even if the overall power numbers are a bit lower. Okay. The third thing to mention is, let's look for some obvious measurement problems before we get started. All right, so first thing, have you calibrated your power meter or done the zero offset, as it's called? You should be doing that before every single time that you ride. It takes just a few seconds, and it just basically means, like zero in a weight scale when you're weighing something in the kitchen, it zeros the power meter and makes sure that nothing funky is going on. So do that before every ride. Second thing is, make sure you're using the same power meter for both tests. Now, in the question being asked here by DJC, it's definitely the same bike, same power meter, so no problem there. I have had an issue come up recently with an athlete we're coaching the team who was measuring his power indoors by using a smart trainer, and then riding a different bike outdoors with a pair of Garmin Vectors. So two different power meters. And it's easy to assume that the power meter should measure the same. Well, it doesn't. Most power meters are really good at being accurate relative to themselves, but one might record 200 watts and one might record 250 or sometimes even 300 watts. There is that much difference sometimes, which is why you can't compare your number with somebody else's. Okay, you can't even compare your number on a watt bike at the gym with your number with your power meter outdoors. You have to have a set of numbers for each specific power meter that you're using, which is why I recommend, if you possibly can, put your bike on the trainer, use the same power meter on the trainer that you're going to ride with outdoors. Okay. Third thing I'm going to say is, try and test on the same course to compare results each time. So over the winter phase, that's not such a big deal. You're always indoors on the trainer doing your tests indoors. But when you move to going outdoors, you might find that the number is different, and sometimes significantly different. And again, that's okay. It's not unusual for it to be lower outdoors, just because it's a little bit harder to put that power out when you're outdoors, when you're worrying about potholes and crosswinds and road, cars and stuff. So that's fine. Forget about the overall number. Park your ego. If the number's lower, that's totally fine and usual, but we need you to have an accurate number for racing based on what you can ride with outdoors. So I don't know, let's say you do your indoor test and your number's 300. You go outdoors and you can only put 270 out. That's fine. We're going to have a separate set of numbers for racing based on an FTP of 270. And then that way, you're not trying to chase bigger numbers than you can put out, because remember, the power meter is mainly there to hold you back on race day, especially early on, rather than to give you a target to shoot for. So we want to make sure that you've done some testing outdoors and those numbers seem about right. Okay. If you're going to go outdoors and ride up a hill, around where I live, there's some significant hills where you can climb for 20 or 30 minutes. You will probably find you can put more power out, sometimes by up to 10 or 12% more, going up a hill. Now, don't make the mistake of going, right, I'm going to do my FTP test going up that hill, and I'm then going to translate that number into my normal riding. If you like, that number's artificially inflated. I'd much rather you do your test on the flat, and then it is usual to be able to put some more power out going uphill, but I don't advise you to make any alterations either in the real world or in your brain when you're riding uphill. Just think of it as it's an extra safety net to make sure you're riding a little bit more within yourself come race day. All right, so don't be tempted into that. I'm going to test going uphill. It is nice for your ego to get a nice big number out at the end of it. I've fallen foul of that in the past as well, but it's just not replicable when you're riding on the flat roads. Okay, so do your testing on the flat, ideally in a time trial, and then you know that when you're racing, it's relative. Okay, and last thing to mention is don't worry, or put your ego on one side is probably a better way to re-emphasize this. If your number is lower in the aero position, don't worry about it. You'll still be going faster if you ride in your aero position than you would be if you're sitting up on the bike, even though you're putting more power out maybe in this position of the person who's asked the question. Even though they're putting more power out sitting up, they're not going to be going faster sitting up, because aerodynamics trumps power. So I hope this has helped a few people out. If you've got any questions, feel free, fire them into this thread here. You can send them over to help@oxygenetic.com. But just remember, we need you to have a set of numbers that you're confident that you're going to take forward with you into the race season that's really going to help you out and be accurate, because the key to this is the power numbers are just there to ensure you have a really good run in the triathlon, rather than being the biggest number you can possibly put out there. Okay. Okie dokie. The question from Natalie at the end, make sure it's available after the live stream. Totally not. We're going to download this, we're going to put it to YouTube, and we're going to post it in various different places as well. So hopefully it'll help a few people out as well. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.